day, everybody, and welcome to the Give to Get program. And our topic today, or actually our session today, which is an Ask the Expert. And I'm going to get into sharing my screen right away because it's one of my, what I'll say, favorite topics that I want to share with you today. And that is the speed of trust. So today on the Ask the Expert at the Give to Get session today, we're going to be talking about the speed of trust and what it can do for you in your life. I like to sit there and say, first and foremost, let's put a couple things to what I'll say, foundation to what we're talking about today. Every emotion that we feel, trust being one of the emotions that we feel, is rooted in either love or fear from that point of view. And so trust is very much rooted in what I'll say, love. The mistrust is very much rooted in fear. And so when we start to understand this and we start to understand truly what trust is all about, and what I'll say, not only how we build trust, how we keep trust, how we use it as a foundation, it's amazing the things that it can do coming into our life. And so I want to share something with you. And a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today came from the book Speed of Trust. That's the actual name of the book, Speed of Trust, from Stephen Covey Jr. Stephen Covey Jr. is the son of Stephen Covey, and Stephen Covey, claim to fame, was the highly acclaimed book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which was an absolutely phenomenal book. And Stephen Covey went on to create the Covey Foundation down in Utah, which was a tremendous training organization that actually got bought out by Franklin at that time. Stephen Covey Jr. ended up taking over the foundation and Covey training from Stephen Covey Sr. And he ended up writing this book called The Speed of Trust, which is, quite frankly, one of my favorite books. And one would argue, at least I would argue, that it's all probably almost more important than the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And Stephen Covey says this one thing, and I want to, what I'll say, quote this one quote here to put it into perspective for the balance of our conversation today. There is one thing that is common to every individual, relationship, team, family, organization, nation, economy, and civilization throughout the world. Pretty powerful. One thing which, if removed, will destroy the most powerful government, the most successful business, the most thriving economy, the most influential leader, the greatest friendship, and the strongest character, the deepest love. On the other hand, if developed and leveraged, which is really important, if developed and leveraged, that one thing has the potential to create unparalleled success and prosperity. Interesting to know where our Give to Get, one of our Give to Get taglines here is where prosperity lives, okay? So clearly where prosperity lives, you got to have trust. One of the big things that we, what I'll say, build into the Give to Get program is our core values, is our vision, is our mission, and it is trust. In every dimension of life, yet it is the least understood, the most neglected, and the most underestimated possibility of our time. And that one thing is trust. Really powerful statement that Stephen Covey Jr. mentions here. And here's why. When things are going good, when things are going well, when people is having success in life, generally speaking, trust is present, okay? And it's usually present at what I'll call a fairly significant level or a very high level. But because things are going well, people underestimate the value of trust. People underestimate how important trust is. So people don't focus on it. And when they don't focus on it, it's easy to lose trust. It's easy to let go of trust. It's easy for trust to then start to slip away. And when things aren't going well, and people are going through difficult times like we've been going through for the last 18 months, when people get divisive like we're having in our society right now, and there isn't a lot of trust, it becomes a lightning rod for conversation, but always on the negative. And all that happens there is we get more distrust, we get more divisive, we get further away from. And that's where Covey says here, if removed, we'll destroy the most powerful government. We'll, quote unquote, take down the most successful business. We'll kill the most thriving economy, and we'll crush the greatest leadership and or the greatest friendship. Okay. And so trust is so important, yet very few of us really start to understand what trust is all about and how it works. So that's what I want to go through today and cover off with us today. Okay. Let's first look at, I'll say, the speed of trust. And what I mean by that is when trust is present, and I'm going to cite Morrow and I here because we have an absolutely fabulous relationship that I am very thankful and very grateful for each and every day, because we've invested in it each and every day. And what I mean by that is when trust is there, and there's very much trust that's present between Morrow and I, the cost of getting things done goes down and the time of getting things goes down, meaning we get more done in less time and less cost. Why? Because trust is present. And so with the speed of trust, Morrow and I can get a lot of things accomplished in a very short time and doesn't cost us a lot because the trust is there. Likewise, though, when the trust isn't there, the speed of trust works in the reverse. When the trust is not there, the cost of getting things done goes up. The time for getting things goes up. And it feels like, I like to use the analogy, like we're running uphill in wet concrete with snowshoes on. And it is so painful. And yet, most of us get into those situations where we're not trusting people and things are slowing down and cost is going up, as opposed to going back up here where, how do we foster trust? How do we build trust? How do we establish trust with people so the cost of getting things done can go down and the time for getting things can go up, or the speed of getting things done can go up? And so I really want you to understand that, because it is absolutely a direct relationship, and it's absolutely an inverse relationship when it comes to what I'll say, the speed of trust when trust is present to the cost of getting things done and the time for getting things done.
On a scale of 1 to 5, would you give yourself a 5 on achieving what you want in life? If your answer is anything less than a 5, right now, I have something awesome for you. Achieving your goals and living your life at a 5 isn't easy. Most people aren't prepared to focus, stay disciplined, and do the everyday work that is necessary to achieve amazing results. But since you're watching this, then I'm guessing that you're not one of those people. And this is an opportunity that will change your life. Give to Get is a global program that brings together world-class coaching and combines it with empowering masterminds and networking opportunities. We provide 5-star guidance for the price of a cup of coffee a day. To find out more, click on the link in the description of this coaching session.
When trust is present, and the more that trust goes up, the more that the trust is there in a relationship, in a government, in a business, in a family, in an association, the more that that trust is present there, the cost of getting things goes down and the time for getting things done goes down. It's absolutely in reverse. Likewise, if trust is not present, and the lower the trust is, or the more the mistrust is another way of saying it, the more the cost of getting things is going to go up and the time for getting things go up. I mean, look at just our election. It doesn't matter what side you're on from our last election, okay? There was so much mistrust in that election, and it cost us as a country so much money from that point of view. And at the end of the day, really, what did we learn? Not a lot, because of the mistrust. So let's start to look at the dynamics of trust. And what I mean by the dynamics of trust is how is trust formed? How is trust built from that point of view? How is trust, I'll say, earned? We're going to talk about that later on as well too, okay? So when you talk about trust, okay, trust gets broken down into what I'll say 2 foundational pillars. One is character, one is competency, okay? If I'm going to fully trust somebody, I'm going to trust them on the character side, and I'm going to trust them on the competency side, meaning their character is very trustworthy and their competency is very trustworthy. And so therefore I have what I'll call full trust. Again, I'm going to go back and cite the example with the relationship that I have specifically with Morrow and the Give to Get program. Morrow's character is very trustworthy. I trust Morrow implicitly. Okay. I never have to question his trust. I never have to stop and question his trust when it comes to quote unquote his character. We're going to break that down in a moment just so that you understand it. And on the other side, I never have to trust or mistrust or question what I'll say, his competency. His competency is always there. So every time we have a conversation, every time we have an interaction, every time we're making a decision in the business, every time we're focusing on something, full trust is there, both with character and with competency. And I'm only going to speak from my side because it's there. I would assume, given the relationship, I think it's there on Morrow's side as well too, but I'll leave him to answer that. And because of that, we can get through things very quickly. That doesn't mean every conversation. Thank you, Morrow. That doesn't mean that every conversation we have isn't easy. That doesn't mean that every conversation we have is always, this peaceful, calm. We have a lot of what I'll say really good Donnybrook conversations. Why? Because I've got my set of beliefs and values and Morrow has his set of beliefs and values. But when they come together to really do what is best for the Give to Get program, what's best for our members, how we want to continue to grow and add value to the program, there's always that trust and respect there because the character trust is always there and the competency trust is always there. So we can move ahead in what I call full trust. Because if one half is there and one half's not, then we got some what I'll say questions. So let's break this down a little bit more so we even understand what we mean by character trust and competency trust. So the trust of character, again, gets broken down into two. Integrity. Again, I'll use the example of Morrow. Do I trust what I'll say, his integrity? And simply the definition of integrity is Morrow going to do what he says he's going to do when he says he's going to do it? The answer to that is yes. Am I going to do what I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it? The answer is yes. So from an integrity point of view, well, again, we have that full trust just around integrity. And so when you're starting to look at, again, your relationships, when you're starting to look at your family, you're starting to look at your businesses, you're starting to look at, again, the government, your politician, your civil leaders, your local leaders, your mayors from that point of view, ask yourself, do you trust their integrity? Meaning, do they do what they say they're going to do when they say they're going to do it? Somebody who does that has what I'll say, very high trust on the integrity side when it comes to character. So if you can think about it, you've got trust up here. It gets broken down into what I'll say two pillars, one being what I'll call character, one being competency. And then that gets broken down even more so in terms of character gets broken down into integrity, intent. Intent becomes the what I'll say almost hidden factor when we start to look at trust, because intent really goes to one's motivation. I say to people all the time, my wife and I are actually just talking about it today when we were on our morning walk. If you understand somebody's motive, you understand the person. If you understand somebody's intent, if you understand somebody's motive, then you can make a decision whether you trust their motive or not, and does it align with their behavior. Here's one of what I'll say the classic issues or problems that come up with what I'll say judgment, okay? And we're all guilty of what I'll say judging people too quickly from that point of view, because we judge them on what we call their behaviors, okay? I can see how somebody's behaving. I can see what somebody does with their behavior. Why? Because it's outward, okay? Intent is inward, intent is on side. And so I might, what I'll say, judge somebody quickly based on their behaviors, but I haven't taken the time to find out what their intent is. If I take the time to find out what their intent is, what their motives are from that point of view, Then I can assess whether their motives are in line with their behaviors. And if their motives are in line with their behaviors, now all of a sudden I can start to trust that individual more, and or I can invest more trust in them. And so if the individual is going to do what they say they're going to do when they say they're going to do it, that's integrity. And I can entrust their intent, meaning there's not a hidden agenda. They're not saying one thing to secretly go get something else. Okay. I'm going to go back because I'm going to be very honest. When I went back to look at the previous, what I'll say, U.S. election, I had a hard time trusting Hillary Clinton. And the reason why I had a hard time trusting Hillary Clinton was because of her intent, not necessarily because of her integrity. And I always used to coin the phrase, my concern with Hillary Clinton is she's going to be telling you one thing to your face as the knife is going in your back. That's, I'll say, a misrepresentation of intention. And so that's where I always personally had a issue around Hillary Clinton, speaking very frankly and very honestly from that point of view. And so you want to start to ask yourself, can I trust the individual from an integrity point of view? Meaning, are they going to do what they say they're going to do when they're going to do it? And can I trust them from an intention or their intent point of view? Meaning, is their intent sincere? Is their intent, what I'll say, trustworthy? Is their intent straightforward? Or is there, what I'll say, a hidden agenda? And like anything else, this cuts both ways. Meaning, if you're wanting people to trust you, what's your integrity like? If you're wanting people to truly trust you from the character side, what's your integrity like? Are you keeping your commitments to other people? Are you keeping your commitments to yourself so you can even trust yourself? Are you doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it? Again, my wife and I had a fun situation around that today because we're wanting to get up. We're wanting to go walk every morning. She wanted to sleep in. Hang on. What was our decision? When did we say we were going to get up and go for a walk? She didn't like it at first, but the moment we got outside, guess what? She liked it a whole lot better. Okay. The other side is, what's your intention? When you're working with somebody and you're interacting with somebody, whether it's a family member, whether it's a coworker, whether it's somebody in an association, whether it's somebody, just from business to business, what's your intent? Is your intention sincere? Is your intention direct? And are you communicating your intention so they know what's going on? Or is it, what I'll say, not direct? Okay. Because when somebody's intention is, I'll say, not pure, not sincere, not direct, then you're going to start to get what I'll say possibly looked at as manipulation. You're wanting me to manipulate me to do something that you want that I don't want to do, or you're attempting me to manipulate me to what your intention is, not necessarily the intention that you're putting out there. And so you always want to look at that as well too. When I work with people too, I say communication is so clear or so key. And I'm going to come back to Emma Lou, because Emma Lou always talks about it. I love the analogy. Good communication is like playing a game of catch. You've got to throw the ball and the individual has to catch it. You can't just throw the ball, because that's not clear communication. That's not constructive communication. And not only do you have to throw it and then catch it, but they've got to be able to, what I'll say, throw it back to you for you to catch it. And so where I'm going with this, as it relates to trust, when you're communicating with people to help them understand what your intent is, communicate what your intent is. Communicate your intent sincerely. Communicate your intent directly. Communicate your intent honestly, so that then they can, when they see your behaviors, they go, their intention lines up with their behaviors. I trust them. And then when you do what you say you're going to do, when you say you're going to do it, well, I'm going to trust you on both sides of that as well too. Okay. So not only can you evaluate somebody in terms of how you trust them based on their integrity and their intent, understand they're going to be evaluating you the same way. Is your integrity and is your intent in line with what you want it to be considered trustworthy? On the competency side, okay, it gets broken down into two. One is capabilities, one is results. Okay, so if we go back a couple of slides, again, trust is broken down between character and competency. We talked about the character being broken down between integrity and intent. Now we've got the competency side being broken down between capabilities and results. Okay, do I trust your capabilities? Do I trust the results you produce? Okay, I might trust your capabilities because you might be very capable of something. You might be very well educated. You might have a tremendous amount of experience, for argument's sake, and therefore I trust your capabilities. But when it comes to results, you might not really have produced that many results. And so I might trust you on the capability side, but I might not trust you on the result side. And likewise, if you are a pretty capable individual and yet you really haven't produced the results, be open to the fact where somebody might say to you, I trust your capabilities, but I don't necessarily trust your results because you haven't done it. Okay, if we go back to this, I kind of have fun with some of my clients when I work with this, because we start to walk them through this in terms of character and competency and integrity and intent versus capability and results. And I say to them, do you trust me as a business coach? And they go, yeah. Okay, and I say, well, how come? Well, one, your integrity is pretty good, Bruce, and your intent's pretty good, and your capabilities are pretty good, and your results are pretty good. I say, okay, well, good. Thank you very much. And then I go back here. If I said, should you trust me as a brain surgeon? Well, my integrity is the same. Okay. And my intention is the same. If I was to operate on you, I truly would want the operation to go as successful as possible. And I would truly do what I say I was going to do to the best of my abilities. Right? I don't know how good my capabilities are as a brain surgeon. And certainly to date, I don't have any results that I could show you to say I'm a competent brain surgeon. So while I would want you to trust me, and I'd expect you to trust me as quote unquote a business coach, I don't know if you want to trust me as a brain surgeon. And so you want to start to look at all of these. And the reason why I break this all down is I like to start to have open conversations. I like to start to encourage everybody to have what I call open conversations when it comes to trusting an individual. Okay. And so a question that I want to throw out to the group right now, and we might take some questions on this, we might not, depending on the group's feedback, is should trust be earned or should trust be given in the beginning? You know, when you start to look at that, I'm going to trust somebody. I'm meeting somebody for the very first time. Should trust be earned or should trust be given? Go ahead, Marl.
Well, it's a tough one, but I have the tendency to trust first and hope that they earn it afterwards. So I give it first. I give my full trust right off the bat.
Absolutely. And if you've given it, in a sense, have they earned it, Mauro?
I guess so, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they've earned it. And one, I'm going to compliment you on that. And two, I'm going to suggest for everybody that's listening to this going forward, if you're asking my opinion, I would suggest to everybody, when you work with people, hand trust out in the beginning. Okay? Absolutely hand trust out in the beginning. And here's the reason that I suggest that. If trust is going to be earned, that means you're coming from a belief already of mistrust. And if you're coming from a belief of mistrust, I always say you get in life what you believe, you don't get what you want. And so you're coming from a belief already of mistrust, you're going to look for things that go, aha, see, I knew I couldn't trust you. Aha, see, I knew I couldn't trust you from that point of view. And it really makes what I'll say fostering trust very difficult. Where I'm going with this is I want to go back up again. There is one thing that is common to every individual, every relationship, every team, family, organization, economy, and civilization throughout the world that if removed will destroy. And yet on the other hand, if developed, will leverage the one thing that has the potential to create unparalleled success. So I always want to fast track success by handing out trust in the beginning, and not, what I'll say, requiring somebody to earn it. Now, I want you to understand there's a couple of things that come with that. Okay. It does put you in a vulnerable situation. It puts you into a leadership role because you're handing out trust first. It also, though, puts you into a vulnerable situation. And I'll say this, there are times where some people in life are going to take advantage of that. There just are. Okay. They're fewer than you think from that point of view. And every time can be what I'll call a learning experience for yourself. But here's the value of what I'll say handing out trust first is, again, I want to go back up here to speed. Okay. If I have trust in the beginning, if I hand out trust in the beginning, the cost of getting things done is going to go down, and the time for getting things done is going to go down, meaning the speed of getting things done is going to go up. Why? Because trust is there. If I'm not going to hand out trust in the beginning, the cost of things getting done is going to go up, and the time for getting things to go up is going to be done, or is going to go up. And that's going to be frustrating, not only for yourself, but whoever you're interacting with. Okay. If you hand trust out in the beginning, I'll go to this slide here. If you hand trust out in the beginning, again, make no mistake, you all vulnerable. You need to be aware of that. But here's the other thing too. You can literally communicate. Again, remember we talk about communication. It's a game of catch, meaning you have to throw the ball so the other person catches it, and then they have to throw it back so you can catch. So whenever I work with somebody and I start to work with, many different business owners, I literally say in the beginning, I'm going to trust you fully. And I'm going to trust you fully until you give me reason not to trust. And the moment you give me reason not to trust, well, we're going to work on rebuilding that trust. And if we can rebuild the trust, great, we're back to square one and away we go. If we can't rebuild the trust, well, then we're moving on and the relationship isn't going to survive. If we can rebuild the trust and we move on, great. If you give me a second reason not to trust, guess what? The relationship's over and we move on. And so you can communicate that out. And the reason why I say that, I want to go here. We talked about intent. If you know somebody's motivation, you understand the person. I've always said, understand the motivation, you understand the person better, okay? One of the single most powerful motivators that we have in our world, in our, what I'll say, palette of emotions that we can extend to other people, is trust. For all the parents out there, I want you to have a little exercise tonight when you go home and you're talking to your children and you're asking your children to do something, or you're giving your children a task, or you're wanting to share something with your children and you're asking something of them. Right after you've asked them, they said that you would go do it. Say, you know what? I trust you're going to do a great job. I'll trust you'll do an amazing job with this. I trust that you'll be able to do this. And watch what happens. Because now all of a sudden, a whole magical thing has gone on inside of them. We're going like, wow, mom trusts me with this. Dad trusts me with this. They believe that I can do this. They believe I can do this well. And all of a sudden, their commitment to that goes up. And guess what happens with their trust in themselves, which then reciprocates back. Okay, guys, we call the program Give to Get. The more you give, the more you get back. There's no secret why we named the corporation Boomerang too. What does a boomerang do? When you throw it out, it comes back to you. The more you extend trust in your life, the more trust will come back to you in your life. Okay. And again, make no mistake, when you hand out trust first, you are vulnerable. There are some people that are going to take advantage of it. I've done this for many years in my life. I will still continually say, I would rather hand out trust and have it taken advantage of the odd time than to go through the painful experience at the beginning of not handing out trust and working with somebody to either try to earn it on their side or for me to try to earn it on my side. Okay. And so trust, again, is so powerful when it's present. Here's the challenge with trust, though. When it's present, most of us don't pay any attention to it. Most of us don't value it. Most of us aren't even aware that trust is even there. So I want you to start to think about your relationships. I want you to start to think about all the successful relationships you have in your life, all the successful relationships you have in your family, you have in your business, you have with your coworkers, and the people that you truly trust, both from, I'll go to this page, a character point of view and a competency point of view. I want you to go thank them, and I want you to go let them know that you trust them, because all that will do is foster more trust. And the people that you don't have that trust with, or there's an issue around trust, again, I want you to be open with it and communicate with them. And very clearly, if you, what I'll say, trust somebody's integrity, but you don't trust their intent, let them know. If you trust somebody's capability, but you don't trust the results they've produced, let them know. If you trust their intent, but you don't trust their integrity, meaning their intention is always very good, but they don't do what they say they're going to do when they say they're going to do it, let them know this. And you can literally start to break trust down into these, what I'll say, 4 areas. So you can literally sit there and say, I trust you with your integrity. I trust you with your intent. I trust you with your capabilities. I'm questioning the trust around the results. Simply why? Because I haven't seen them. If you can start to produce some results in the next little bit, I'm going to trust you even more. And when I trust you more, I'm going to hand out trust more, which means you're going to have more authority. You're going to have more autonomy. You're going to have more freedom and flexibility to go do your job. Okay. And so I like to get very, what I'll say, clear, open, and honest with communication when it comes to trust, because it's so powerful. Okay. We talk about how, and I talked right in the beginning, every emotion is rooted in love or fear, every emotion. Okay. And for the people that are watching, I really want you to write this down. We are only born with 2 fears in our life. There's only 2 fears that we're born with in our life. One's the fear of falling, and the other is fear of loud noises. When we were little babies, we were inherently born with the fear of falling. If we thought we were going to fall, we tense up. If we hear a loud noise, we tense up. Those are the only 2 fears that we're born with. Every other fear is learned, which means every other fear can be unlearned. And where I'm going with that is every emotion is rooted in love or fear. And so they talk about how, quote unquote, love conquers all. And I truly believe that love does conquer all. What's the silent killer of love? And I say silent for a reason. The silent killer of love is mistrust. If I'm quote unquote mistrusting my spouse, it's going to eventually kill off the love. If I'm mistrusting my brother, it's eventually going to kill off the love that I have for my brother. If I'm mistrusting my fellow coworkers, it's going to erode the love if you love the coworker, or it's certainly going to erode respect from that point of view. And I call it silent for a reason, because it actually happens silently, because a lot of us are very, I'll say, fearful to talk about mistrusting of another individual. And yet when trust is present, because everything's going so well, we don't give it the credit that it's due. We're not necessarily aware of it. And we don't extend the trust to other people, letting them know that we do trust them, so we can foster it even more. Okay. If we look at it, okay, and again, I don't know where people sit on their spiritual side, but ultimately, call it the higher power, call it whatever you want. I'm very much believe in God. And what's the one thing that God asks us to do? Trust him. Well, if we trust God, we're probably going to work out for us. If we trust the higher power, it's probably going to work out for us. Okay. The US government literally prints on their money, "In God we trust." Okay. Trust is such a powerful, powerful emotion to help us move more onto the love side, to help motivate people and to what I'll say, bring an unparalleled success into our, I'll say, life, whether it be our organizations, our businesses, our family units, our economy, our nation, individual relationships, friendships from that point of view. And again, I always say, if you want to be a leader, you better be a reader. If you want to be an influential leader, if you want to be a good leader, if you want to be a leader that people will follow and will inspire to what you aspire them to, they've got to trust you. If they can't trust you, or if they don't trust you, they won't follow you. And so again, what are the 4 things around trust? First of all, character and competency, which gets broken down to integrity and intent, capability and results. Ask yourself, how are you leading in those 4 categories, and what can you do to be a better leader? Okay. One of the key things about leadership too, when it comes to character, we talked about being vulnerable. Okay. Being vulnerable is a big part of leadership and character that builds trust. When you make a mistake, admit it. When you're leading, don't feel like you have to have every answer too. And trust in the fact that you don't necessarily have to have all the answers, but you can work with your team to get them. And so it's a great book. We've talked about doing a book club coming up in the Give to Get program as a new, I'll say, benefit and perk to the memberships. One of the first books that I'd like to walk the membership through is The Speed of Trust. And so we might be working with you next month around this as well too. That's my session for today. If we have any questions or comments, let's open that up, and I'm going to stop sharing now. We're all good? Speed of trust. When trust is there, cost of getting things done. When trust is there and the speed of trust is high, the cost of getting things done goes down. The time for getting things done goes down. When trust is not there, the cost of getting things done goes up, and the speed for getting things done goes up, meaning takes longer. All the best. Take care.